questions that I cut off for any other teams, or if you still want to dig into some more things about Ilya's concept, I think we have, let's say another 8 or so minutes before we're scheduled to do the voting. So see a bunch of hands still up there. Brian, who would you like to ask a question to?
Well, I had a question for Ilya, actually. So yeah, it's super interesting, but I wasn't quite sure I understood well, actually one question I have is it, I was trying to sort of work through, I think, so you're suggesting this works based on Hebbian plasticity, and I have a couple of questions. So at what site is the plasticity occurring? And is it possible, like you're sort of hitting the whole spinal cord, I think, with the stimulation. Is it possible to make the learned, the new learned activity very selective in accordance with, can you, or how many sort of degrees of freedom would you imagine new degrees of freedom bringing online with this method?
I'm maybe not the best person to answer these questions because I'm not a neuroscientist yet. I'm working on this, but I'm from the business side of the matter and from the engineering side. But I believe what we try to do is to start the process from both sides, from motor cortex and even more we start from visual cortex through motor cortex and then to the peripheral nerves through the spinal cord. And the idea is to boost up to fire the neurons in affected area from the spinal cord to the limb, and at the same time to start motor cortex working, and in this way to trick the brain and to stimulate Hebbian plasticity, to trick the brain and to make it believe that it remove the arm of the leg by itself, and thus to make it send the same command next time, in the hope that it will go through the whole circuit. I am trying to be not too much scientific guy, because I'm not, but if you're interested to know more, I can try to explain to you or ask my scientific colleague to give you more information. Would be my pleasure.
Okay, yeah, that would actually be. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your question, Brian. Gina, what's your question?
Yeah, it is for Ilya as well, and it's probably is the only presented that is close to clinical trials. So I would like to understand from a clinical standpoint of view, are you doing clinical trials in Canada and the US, or you mentioned during your presentation you have collaborations from different countries, including some in Europe. So I would like to understand what is the intent.
Yeah, so currently we are very looking for partners in Canada and United States, and at the same time, in parallel, so our technical team is in Russia, and we partner in Russia. We partner with the big university called Skoltech, and with them we start the same project to bring the technology to the market, and with them we start clinical. We don't call it clinical trials, clinical pilots. But to bring it to North American markets, the clinical pilot should be like North American, Canadian, or American. So we are very looking for partners here, and this is why I'm talking here, in front of you.
And sorry, I have a follow-up question. So I'm assuming is it a class 4?
No, it's class 2A or B or class. It's class 2 anyways.
Okay, and is the company planning in including AI to the medical device?
Yes, there is some small part of, so talking about brain-computer interface, we use AI to recognize the motor pattern or the brain pattern that we are looking for. So this is what the AI side. Not too much AI, to be honest, but there is some.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, great question.
And Terry, who would you like to ask a question to?
I'm going to ask a question to Sydney, actually. So my question is, I know you mentioned that you would have to rely on community partners and the community in general for sort of updating the information. But how are you going to sort of vet it, I guess? And how would you, so let's say, for example, that elevator is out. Obviously, they'll fix an elevator at some point in time. Do you have a way of being able to remove that information and changing it?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. An obvious problem. So the big two kind of, I guess, attack points that we've come up with is one, to have, I guess, like user voting on barriers that people are encountering on their way, kind of like with Google Maps, how it asks you, is this speed trap still here, right? So users voting on if the barrier is still there and if it's still a problem. As in terms of vetting it coming on, there is a little bit of trust there in the user to add the data in like a correct way, but I would also say that there's the possibility of having like super users, right, who are verified users who, when they add things, we trust what they're saying. But there's another part of that, which is to make sure that the facilities and municipalities are involved in the process, right? Which is why all those partners have to be a part of this, because we can't do it with just one of the 5 groups. We have to have all 5. So an example of that would be maintenance with Edmonton Transit System. Once they fix the elevator, uploading it to the app, because we know that they have data like that already and they have it internally. But how do we get it out to people so that they have a good place to go and easily get that information?
Yeah, it sounds like my favorite mountain bike trail, the Trail Forks app, where you get to record all your trails. Brian, what's your question and for whom?
I have lots of questions for everybody, but so the one for the repositioning group in particular. So the one thing I didn't quite understand. So it sounded like the repositioning mat was meant to sort of, well, okay, it doesn't sound, based on your diagrams, it doesn't look exactly like repositioning. It looks sort of like, you know, redistributing sensor without really moving the person at all. So is that right? And, you know, to what extent are you sort of increasing peak pressures, you know, while you're reducing, you're changing the pattern of pressure over time? Is that a concern? Or, I mean, to some extent, I think the integral of pressure over sort of the back, if the person's lying on the back, would be unchanged by your approach. So, I mean, I'm just sort of wondering about, nonlinear effects. Does that actually make things better if a part of the body gets a bit of a break, or is it worse if the peak pressure is higher? So that's one thing I couldn't really pull out of the presentation.
Okay. Sorry about that. What it would actually do is identify exactly where the pressure points are. Then we'd reconfigure to redistribute it. So try to diminish the exact pressure points to a tolerable threshold, and one that doesn't cause problems. And through that, we'd actually mimic sort of a person. Say you're sitting on a chair right now. You're constantly shifting slightly, displacing pressure so that it doesn't stay at one static point for too long. We're going to mimic that, but we're aware that the current medical guidelines are in place for a reason, and the reason that you have to displace 30 degrees every 2 hours is that that's the only thing that's proven to work. So we're also planning on including that, the complete repositioning.
Okay, now, I didn't understand how the repositioning would occur with the sort of design that you showed us. Is that something like an additional thing that is to be designed, or does it work somehow with your current design?
Yeah, well, actually, how it would work is that you have a series of inflatable cushions, and if you elevate one side and diminish the other side, it creates, not a cliff, but a slope on which it would actually reposition the individual.
Okay, I see. So you sort of roll them around a little bit in addition to sort of redistributing.
That would be one way of putting it, yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your question. Oh, go ahead, Joseph.
No, you go right ahead.
Oh, I just say, I think the judges should go to our breakout room and deliberate.